Don't go away, because in just a little while, I'm going to tell you who the winner of the t-shirt was. As always, I invite you to follow me on Spotify and also on Instagram, where every day there are a few more of us. Here's the number where you can send me your experiences anytime, in audio format. You can add photos, videos, or anything else that complements your story. Friends, let's not waste any more time. And right now we're starting with this story where a family truly experienced unique moments that will really make you think. Enjoy it. So many things happened that it's hard to know where to start. Some of them were minor, but others were very different, and as a family, we went through real terror. My name is Emilce. I'm from the province of Córdoba, and in the next few minutes, I want to tell you about some of the many things my family and I experienced over the years. Maybe, to start this story, I should mention my mom, because without a doubt, I think she is a key part of this story.
I should mention that my mother, who passed away 3 years ago in August, it was 3 years on August 10th, she had a pretty strong ability to visualize, let's say psychic abilities to visualize. There were situations where misfortunes happened and she could always see them before they occurred. That is, she had visions of situations that were going to happen. She had them with the family, but also with people outside the family circle. For example, there was a well-known folk group, and one night their car broke down on a road and one of the members was run over by a long-distance bus from a very well-known company as well. At that moment, my mom would have flashes where she was doing any normal activity, not thinking about anything at all, having a conversation or making food. That particular night, I remember it was hot. We were in the yard and my mom came from Ella. She used to smoke a lot. She had gone inside to get a new pack of cigarettes because she had finished the one she had, where my father, sister, and I sat in the yard. And she stops just as she steps into the yard and she goes blank. My dad asks her what's wrong. And she says, oh, so-and-so, a member of such and such group is going to die, run over by a long distance bus from such and such company on the Tanca Road. But it was like my mom was a machine. She was repeating the voice. She had no facial expression. Her body was rigid. She was standing. Then my dad looks at her, looks at me. My sister was very little. I'm almost 10 years older than my sister. Well, anyway, I was just a little girl, so I kept playing, doing what I was doing. Then my mom woke up, sat up, lit a cigarette. I don't know. Oh, nothing ever happened. Indeed, the news went national and everyone learned about the fate of this folk singer.
I'm saying this because I don't know if I inherited something, since I sometimes see things. And even though it might sound like something out of a movie, I see people who simply don't belong to this plane. It's that simple. It's very complicated to explain it, and for someone who hasn't experienced it to believe these kinds of situations. But I really want to focus on telling every detail of this story without trying to convince anyone, and then they can form their own opinion. As I said, since I was a child, and even in my teenage years, I came across moments that simply had no explanation at all. From seeing shadows where no one was, to spotting people in broad daylight on the street who vanished instantly. As if, for some reason, they manifested themselves in front of me, or maybe I, without knowing how, had access to see certain things that others couldn't. But putting these experiences aside, I'd like to tell you about the things that happened in our house. A place where not only I was a participant and witness to these anomalies, but also my own family and friends. They managed to confirm that all of this is true, and the question we always ask ourselves, of course, is why? In our case, there are some ideas that I will present throughout the story. So I ask you to sit down, listen carefully, and I hope you enjoy this story that very few people know. Thank you.
When we bought the house, we were looking for it to be close to my mom's place since she was the one who took care of my kids. I remember that I have 5. We moved into the house and everything went smoothly. At that time, I don't know if I mentioned it to you before, I am a primary school teacher.
But as the weeks went by, what did start to happen was that different things would break in very ridiculous ways. Until then, we just considered it bad luck, or maybe something normal. Things usually break no matter how much you try to prevent it, but over time, we started to think that maybe all of this was somehow connected. The months went by, and sometime later I got a rather strange call from a private number. When I answered, I learned they were calling from a major Catholic school in Córdoba to offer me a long-term substitute teaching job. This meant it would be at least 6 months or more. So for me, it was really a great opportunity. I interviewed on Friday and started working at the school on Monday. I never found out in my life how they got my contact information. Thank you. Strangely, all this happened on the same day I started at the new institution. The paranormal situations in our house intensified much more than what we considered normal up until that moment.
Some of the things that kept breaking, I attributed to the fact that it was an old house, and well, like everything, they probably just gave it a facelift and sold it. A person who used to come work here, a construction worker, told me at the time, after I had called him many times, that he was a man who had already worked in this house before. So he knew he had installed new pipes and everything. Back when the previous owners lived here, he told me that the mother of the previous owner used to do strange things and odd jobs, and that he had found several things buried as he was making repairs and so on.
And surely you, who are listening to this, might think that because of the builder's comment, we started to get influenced by suggestion. And that's exactly why we thought that any noise was something paranormal. But no, because he was the one who confessed all that after I told him about some of the paranormal things that were happening, so there was no suggestion in our family, for example. And this was long before we had that conversation with the builder. I was pregnant, and my youngest daughter started saying that she saw a dark shadow of a man in her room where she could see his shape perfectly but not his face, and that he would just stay in a corner of the room completely still, and she felt like he was watching her in an intimidating way. This entity has a unique trait I've noticed recurring in other channel experiences, was that he had a wide-brimmed hat. And the most curious thing was that our other son also started mentioning this shadow, which would watch him from a corner of his room almost every night. Fortunately, that was all it was for now. But it's more than enough to keep you uneasy, especially since it's your own children who are being harassed by this entity. As I mentioned before, when I started at this Catholic school, something happened at home that chilled me. One of my children started screaming desperately. When my mom got to the room because she was taking care of them, she asked what had happened and why he was over our baby's crib, who was 1 year old at the time. And she says that she was able to see the exact moment when this man, that dark entity, wanted to take him away, and thanks to his screams, she managed to scare it off. Now would be a good time for each of us to reconsider how we'd act in these situations. And I say this because many times kids show certain behaviors, claiming that they see or hear strange things. And as adults, we minimize this, assuming that it's either just their imagination or they're simply trying to get attention for some reason. And this could very well be possible, but what if it's all real? That event, when this happened with my son and my baby, I was at work and my mom was taking care of the kids. When I arrived, she told me all about it and mentioned something else. She tried to leave the house as much as possible. If she knew my husband and I wouldn't be home, she'd take all my children to her house for a few hours. She lived around the corner because she actually confessed to me that she couldn't stand the things she heard, felt, and saw in there. She told me seriously that day, there's something bad in this house and the kids aren't safe. Time passed. Sadly, my mom began having health issues that were signs of a serious illness. And at that point, we had no choice but to hire a nanny since my mom couldn't take care of the kids. As always, her health was the most important thing at that moment, and with this woman who was taking care of the kids, something very important happened. She had no idea about the things that were happening in the house. This is also a pretty important detail.
The nanny was well known, a lady. She was over 50 years old, so we trusted her a lot. And the first thing she told me was, "Oh, in this house, something tells me that I can't feel at ease. They whistle, I hear whistling from your room, I hear papers being shuffled, your things being moved around, someone rummaging through your stuff inside the closet." She said she even started to wonder if a rat had gotten in, which seemed really strange to her. But I went into the room and the sounds were coming from your board. I opened it and there was absolutely nothing. But she tells me the whistles, the noises, and all the things you feel that move are inside your room.
When I heard this, I immediately thought of all those nights I felt someone breathing on my face in the middle of the night, or to the side but with a chill. In those moments, I tried to find any explanation that was a bit more logical. Maybe it was air coming through the window, no matter the season, or if it was open or closed. Deep down, I knew it wasn't true. Still, thinking more rationally helped me stay calm. This happened several nights a week, and I admit that it got to a point where I got so used to it that it didn't scare me anymore. But one time, something much more intense happened. We woke up at night because my daughters were screaming desperately. My husband and I rushed to the room to see what happened, and we found both of them crying, very scared, pressed up against the headboard of one of the beds. And when they saw us, the first thing one of them said was, "The man came back, Mom, the black man with the hat." It's worth mentioning that for months, approximately, I have no idea why, the situation hadn't been happening. But that night, he came back and gave them the scare of their lives. They saw him standing at the edge of one of the beds, very close to them, and they realized he was in the room when they heard a very, very specific noise. In the room was a tall, full-length mirror. They heard something like fingers on glass, and when they looked, they saw the shadow passing by, walking in front of the mirror, dragging one of its hands over it, and then standing still next to one of the beds. And the most impressive thing was that when I looked at the mirror with my husband, we could see that mark. It was from a large hand that had indeed run its fingers over the glass. From that night on, something truly terrifying started to happen. At any time of day or night, you could hear a horrible, raspy, hoarse voice of something that was calling one of my daughters. And this sound came from places where there was absolutely no one, logically. Some furniture would move and no one in the family forgets the kitchen chairs. As usual, we spent most of the day outside the house working, and the kids were at school. During dinner and before going to bed, it was a very special time for us to talk and catch up. After dinner, the dishes were washed and the whole kitchen was tidied up completely. The chairs were always arranged the same way at the table, and then we went to bed. It was incredible to wake up in the morning and find all those chairs scattered around the kitchen as if someone had played with them. But
Yes, Octavio also saw this dark man up until he was about 4 years old. By the time he turned 5, he didn't see him anymore. And he told us that he was running around the house. And he goes into his sister's room and then he comes running to me and says, "Mom, a man came into the house and hid under Lucia's bed." I ask, "What, how, a man?" He replies, "Yes, a man came in. There was no way anyone could have gotten into the house because we were all there, the possible entrances. No one had come in." So I ask him, "How do you know?" He tells me, "Because I was walking and I went into the girl's room," he says, "and that man was there." What was he like? "He was tall, dressed in black, wearing a hat," he tells me. "And what did you do?" "When I opened the door," he says, "he was standing there. And when I came in, he ran and hid under Lucia's bed."
something important was that on several occasions we saw a teenage girl in the house and also another little boy. At various times and under different circumstances, it became unsettling and made no sense. We wanted to try to find out why they appeared in our house, why they followed our children, why the boy. Once, for example, he appeared at the kitchen table while we were having dinner and disappeared right before our eyes. There were more questions than answers.
From then on, we started seeing this teenage girl and this boy in the house all the time. By this time, it was 2019, and I was at another school, also a Catholic one. So I decided to talk to one of the nuns. So I told her, maybe this sounds really strange and crazy, and I don't talk about it with anyone precisely because of the reaction it might cause. But these things were happening to me. This nun tells me that she has a prayer and healing group that's from another province. She asked me for photos of the whole house and said they would see what was happening. What could it be about? And they told me that indeed those two apparitions in the house were like they needed something, that warmth of home, that family love that was noticeable in my family to outsiders. Even though I don't usually talk about my family, I'm very reserved. There's a lot of love. Everything was calm until one day I was standing at the counter washing some things and scolding my children because I don't recall what trouble they got into. And then I look toward the hallway and I see this girl passing by again. This teenager. She walked by as if nothing happened and entered the girl's room. I couldn't see or feel the boy anymore, but we've seen the girl from time to time. Lucia also called me recently crying and said, "Mom, are you going to be much longer?" Because I was bringing her the clothes which we had folded on the dining room table, to her room. When I turn the corner and she sees me, she says, "I managed to see the legs, the jeans," she tells me, "the legs and the sneakers of someone who was going into my room." And yesterday, when I started to record these audios, I get to the school and I get a message from my daughter and she says, "Mom, you won't believe what happened to me." And I have it recorded, so I thought it was a video. I told her, "Send it to me." And she sent me an audio that she was recording for a friend. Suddenly, there's a noise in the audio. She asks, "Do you know what that is?" I tell her, "The laser door closed on me." Honestly, I don't know what it is, who it is, but I feel that Cobra, things keep breaking. Even if you fix things or buy new items, problems always remain. Do you get that feeling of neglect? It feels heavy. We feel really tired. It's like there's a really heavy energy.
Thank you for reading to the end. I hope you enjoyed the story. And as I promised you at the beginning, now we're finally going to find out who won the giveaway. Alright friends, let's do the giveaway. I wish all of you the best of luck. Right now we're going to paste the link of the video that participated. Here it is. It's done. A lot of people participated. Thank you very much. 860 comments. That's a lot. Is there a prize? Alternates, don't choose. Let's see who wins. Good luck. That's it. That was fast. Denis Ordóñez, congrats. Hi Andres, I'm in line as always for every video you upload. I'm very interested in this topic. Coincidentally, I watched interviews with abductees just this week, and some of them agree on something that happened to both testimonies: memory loss. So I'll go out on a limb and say that both people were abducted, and that's why they have that gap in their memory. I saw 10 ghosts. My identification ends with 773. Greetings from General Mosconi Salta. Congratulations, Denis. There were 10 little ghosts. Still, there are many who counted more or less. I don't know how they did it, but some people just counted anything. But for the most part, I think there were 10 and it was pretty simple. Well friends, congratulations Dennis, and thank you to everyone who participated. There were so many of you. Keep in mind that soon we're going to do another giveaway here and a new one on Instagram. So follow me on Instagram, we're posting some pretty cool stuff. Alright friends, I send you all a big hug and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.